COVID-19 has dominated the past year and continues to shape our lives as we look to the immediate future. It's also dominated our work here at ADF International over the past year, as some governments have used the pandemic to target the rights of religious minorities, and others have introduced far-reaching measures that unfairly target religious expression and worship. As shops, restaurants, liquor stores, even casinos have been allowed to open, in many places, religious worship has been shut down. As Western governments determined that certain activities, like getting a bicycle repaired, were essential, and other activities like going to church were not. As US Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch put it in a leading US case last year, he said, "Who knew that public health would so perfectly align with secular convenience?" Well, we've been challenging this unfair targeting of religion in many countries around the world. For example, in Scotland, we were able to support Canon Tom, a Glasgow priest who successfully challenged the Scottish blanket ban on worship. The ruling, which declared the blanket ban to be unlawful, came just in time for Easter. And we also celebrated good news from Chile, where the Chilean Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the country's COVID-19 restrictions were being applied unfairly against religious organizations. And this meant that across Chile, people were free to celebrate Easter without facing unfair government hostility. In Ireland, however, Christians are still banned from attending church. Even as shops are allowed to open, with precautions in place, churches have been closed for nearly a full year now. So ADF International is supporting efforts to challenge these unjust restrictions. And this is not about health measures. It's about governments and state authorities imposing unlawful and disproportionate constraints which infringe on fundamental human rights, including the freedom of religion and worship. Well, although COVID has dominated the news over the past year, there are many other trials Christians are facing all around the world right now. And one of the biggest challenges here in Europe relates to freedom of speech. It's remarkable that in some countries in Europe, even silent prayer has been banned if you dare to pray in the wrong place. For example, in Pforzheim, Germany, a 40 Days for Life group used to gather twice a year to peacefully and silently pray for women who were considering abortion and the lives of their unborn children. But the city of Pforzheim prohibited them from praying silently and peacefully outside an affiliate of the abortion provider Planned Parenthood. ADF International is supporting the challenge against this ban on prayer. And the silencing of the pro-life message is sadly a recurring theme across the whole of Europe. For example, Julia Rinkovic, a midwifery student at Nottingham University in the UK, was forced to suspend her studies after facing a fitness to practice investigation over her involvement with and leadership of a pro-life society. And although we were able to support Julia and the university eventually sort of apologized and she was able to resume her studies, it's a very concerning example of a Christian being silenced and intimidated for standing up for her deeply held beliefs. Well, that's in Europe, but further afield from places like, for example, Pakistan, we see forced conversion through sham marriages, and they affect an estimated 1,000 girls from religious minorities every single year. Myra is one of these girls. She was abducted and forcibly married to a much older Muslim man who brutalized, blackmailed, married, and forcibly converted her from her Christian faith. She gladly escaped, but this Easter, she's forced to wait in hiding rather than being able to join in Easter celebrations. And together with an allied lawyer, we are working to secure her freedom and the freedom for many other girls in similar situations throughout Pakistan. And lastly, David Bile, a Canadian evangelist, also cannot return home this Easter. Although he had lived in Turkey for almost 20 years with his wife and children and called that place his home, the authorities have now barred him from re-entering the country simply for sharing his faith. David's ministry began as a street evangelist sharing the gospel across Istanbul, but from around about 2007, he noticed growing harassment as the police became skeptical of this public display of Christianity, even though it was lawful. And despite complying with all the relevant laws and regulations, the Turkish government then ordered David to leave the country, separating him from his family for over a year. And he's since been banned from re-entering, and his case is one of many in Turkey right now where Christians and evangelists are either being forced to leave the country or otherwise having their rights restricted. So we filed an application on David's behalf at the European Court of Human Rights, and we are hopeful for success in that case. Well, despite the many successes we've had in protecting fundamental freedoms, as you can see, Christians are facing an array of different challenges all over the world, whether it's persecution, forced conversion, bans on sharing the good news of the Easter message, or prohibitions on silent prayer or participation in pro-life work. The freedom to speak freely and live according to one's faith are being restricted. So we at ADF International have been able to come alongside many Christians, but there's always more work to be done to protect free speech and those who are persecuted. So I invite everyone to learn more about these important causes and how you can get involved by visiting our website at www.adfinternational.org. Thank you and have a blessed and restful Easter.